Good afternoon. I'll call the October 25th meeting of the Committee on Public Services Committee to order. Start with acknowledging that we meet on the traditional land of Treaty 6 territory and acknowledge the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Nakota Sioux, as well as the Métis and Inuit, and now settlers from around the world. Start with a roll call. Councillor Jans.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Councillor Wright.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Councillor Tang.
Hello.
We are not joined by Mayor Sohi today, and I think he's not joining us. And Councillor Jans has to step out, so when he does, we'll be down to the minimum quorum of 3, which will mean that none of the 3 of us can leave until Councillor Jans returns. I'll take a motion for adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
We need to.
My apologies. I move that the October 25-28 Community Public Services Committee meeting agenda be adopted with the following changes: the addition of 10.1, bylaw amendment for indoor shisha consumption, and replacement report 7.2, 2022 anti-racism grants program recommendations, community services report CS 01365.
Thank you. Please vote.
I'm a yes, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Wright.
I'm also a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. We have 4 votes.
Thank you. Please display the vote. That's carried. Approval of the minutes. I'll move that we don't have any minutes listed.
Should be the October 11th, 14th Community and Public Services Committee meeting minutes.
Right, I'll move approval of the minutes of the October 11th meeting. Please vote.
We have 4 votes.
Please display the vote. It's carried. Protocol items, I'm not aware of any. Selection of items for debate. Councillor Jans?
Thank you. I would like to select item 7.5. And I'm sorry, I don't have the sheet in front of me. Are there registered speakers and other items I need to select?
Yeah, but someone else can get those, that's fine.
Okay, yep, 7.5.
Great, thank you. Councillor Wright?
I would like to select 7.7, please.
That's all? Okay, thank you. Councillor Tang?
I'll do 7.1, 7.2, and 7.8.
Thank you. Any oth-
Apologies, was that 7.2 and 7.3?
7.1 and 7.2, and 7.8.
And 7.8, thank you.
Apologies, 7.6 too.
Okay, that leaves 7.3 and 7.4. Without selection then, I'll take a motion to approve the recommendations in those 2 reports.
So moved.
Thank you. Please vote.
We have 4 votes.
Please display the vote. That's carried. Requests for specific time on agenda.
Would you like me to repeat back what was?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, please do, Madam.
No, thank you. So thank you, Mr. Chair. This afternoon, Community and Public Services Committee has passed the recommendations of the following reports without debate. Item 7.3, license agreement with Edmonton Minor Hockey Association 2022 to 2023, ice hockey arena rentals, and item 7.4, housing redevelopment grant program update.
Great, thank you. Sorry for missing that. Let's see. Request to speak.
Mr. Chair, I will move that the Community and Public Services Committee hear from the following speakers in panels when appropriate. For 7.1, Indigenous Culture and Wellness Center update, Lloyd Cardinal to answer questions only, remote. Tiffany Shaw, remote. Gary Bosgold, remote. Beverly Allard, Indigenous Circle Steering Committee, to answer questions only, remote. Louis Cardinal Kichiaski, Sacred Land, remote. Corolla Cunningham, Indigenous Community Wellness Circle, remote. And Karen Bruno, Indigenous Culture and Wellness Center. remote. And 7.7, City of Edmonton and Edmonton Federation of Community Leagues Collaborative Relationship Agreement. Laura Cunningham-Chapelet from the EFCL, remote.
Great, thank you. Please vote in hearing from those speakers.
We have 4 votes.
Please display the vote. That's carried. Are there any councillor inquiries? Okay, not hearing any. That takes us then to public reports and item 7.1. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We are here today along with members of the Indigenous Culture and Wellness Center Steering Committee to provide you with an update on the progress to date for this project. In 2016, City Council approved $3 million in funding for the first 3 phases of the center's development. Those were strategy, concept, and design as part of the End Poverty Roadmap. In 2021, at the request of the Steering Committee, administration brought forward a report with the recommendation that Goal 1, Action Number 1 of the End Poverty Edmonton Roadmap 2017 to 2021, as set out in Attachment 3 of the March 3, 2021 Citizen Services Report CS 00337, be amended to change the lead from City of Edmonton to End Poverty Edmonton. On March 15, 2021, City Council approved that recommendation. Council also approved a funding request from End Poverty Edmonton for the development of a business case. Since that time, administration, through the Indigenous Relations Office as the liaison, has continued to meet with the Steering Committee to provide advice and support on how to move the project forward through the city's project development and delivery model. End Poverty Edmonton contracted a consultant to draft a business case, which was provided to administration in October 2021. We are joined here today by members of this steering committee who have prepared a presentation. I'm pleased to turn things over to Courtney Boucher, Director of Indigenization with End Poverty Edmonton.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Courtney Boucher with End Poverty Edmonton, and my colleague Lori Sokoluk will be the main presenter on the presentation. So I'll pass it off to Lori.
Thanks, Courtney. Good afternoon, everyone. And good afternoon to Community and Public Services Committee and other city councilors. Let me introduce myself. My name is Lori Sokoluk. I've been involved with the ICWC, or Indigenous Culture and Wellness Center, Steering Committee as a member, and more recently I have undertaken project management role supporting the work of the Steering Committee as we continue to move the ICWC project forward. I am joined by staff from End Poverty Edmonton Secretariat, Eric Antman, Courtney Boucher, and Karen Bruno, who also provide support and will assist in addressing questions as they may arise. I'm here today to provide you with a progress update on the Indigenous Culture and Wellness Center project and put forward a proposed scope and potential budget needed to continue to move forward. In terms of introduction and background, for decades, Indigenous people in Edmonton have voiced the need for a dedicated space. While work on the ICWC has been underway since 2016, and the Indigenous community has been involved, it has only been Indigenous-led since the spring of 2021. The ICWC is envisioned as a safe and welcoming space for the practice of community, culture, and well-being. The realization of an ICWC in Edmonton supports the aims of reconciliation. In terms of sharing progress on deliverables from the March 3rd, 2021 proposal that was included in the reports attached to this agenda item, on hiring a project team, there were consultants hired in the spring of 2021 to focus on the development of a business case and undertaking community participation and engagement. The project management role was supported by End Poverty Edmonton staff. In terms of the creation of the deliverable to create a legal entity, the steering committee discussed and explored options and their implications, but a specific legal container and governance model has not yet been decided on. In terms of the deliverable about engaging, or I guess continued community participation, there has been ongoing conversations, keeping community updated, and we're continuing to include community participation as we move forward. In terms of item D, a draft business case, as was mentioned earlier, a first draft business case was completed on October 2021, and an interdepartmental team from the city reviewed and provided recommendations, but that draft business case does need revisions, and we are working on that. In terms of task E, community engagement, once we have a revised draft business case, then we can then take it to community for, I just noticed the slides came up. So once we have a revised draft business case, we'll take it out to the community and ask for their input. And we definitely want to be able to validate the contents of that document. That's the right slide. Thanks. So I've just been going through each of those to highlight where we are. And that's our own evaluation of how far we believe we're along on each one of those items. I'm now on task F. Again, this one is dependent on the previous ones being completed. So we haven't yet done this and are hoping to do this next year, but we're here now to provide an update. In addition, this deliverable was not part of the original proposal, but we have been made progress on the review and assessment of an unanticipated opportunity that came our way in the form of a potential property. Next slide. In terms of challenges and opportunities, as the steering committee, we're attempting to balance complex and diverse Indigenous interests, agendas, perspectives, and pressures as we work towards shared vision and understanding of the ICWC. We have discovered this project is not a linear process, often finding ourselves wondering which element comes first. We've had many a chicken or the egg scenario, when probably more accurately, they're interrelated, and that's why it's not simply just moving from one task to the next. In addition, so progress is more cyclical and requires returning to previous elements to ensure alignment before we move ahead. So it's more of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. In addition, we've experienced a number of challenges and interruptions, as many people have, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. There's also been organizational growth at End Poverty Edmonton. As was mentioned earlier, there was a transition of the project lead for ICWC from the city to the community. There's been some fluctuating membership on the steering committee. And like I mentioned earlier, we are exploring the feasibility of other potential site options. We look to mayor and councillors for advice and are open to hearing about potential alignments that may amplify, contribute to, or expedite the development of the ICWC. Next slide. In terms of our current situation, although we may have not yet completed all the deliverables outlined in the March 2021 proposal, we have been working diligently to address issues as they arise, and we have made progress. Over the next year, we will continue to work to make revisions to the draft business case while taking into consideration the recommendations from the city's interdepartmental readiness review, including in the areas of governance, partners, legal entity, and engagement. There is also need for additional support in the area of strategic project facilitation, project development, and additional feasibility studies on other potential site options that will all require supplemental expertise. In terms of a proposed scope, we have estimated that completing the necessary work will cost approximately $300,000 and are putting forward our preliminary scope and budget estimate, which we believe falls within the scope of the objectives of the existing capital profile for ICWC. We feel it is prudent to continue our due diligence in order to ensure we are meeting the unique and diverse needs of Indigenous communities in the Edmonton region. And with this level of support, with the level of support suggested here, our aim, again, is to have a capital budget request ready for next year's budget cycle. Next slide. So in summary, we're here today to provide a progress update on the Indigenous Culture and Wellness Center, to put forward a proposed scope and budget to support further refinement and project management of the ICWC and the draft business case, as well as raise awareness of the ICWC among city councilors. We're here to respond to your questions, and we thank you for the opportunity to share the progress on this groundbreaking project. And as mentioned earlier, we are also joined by members of the ICW Steering Committee and others who have registered to speak. So I know that some of the documents may have come to you late, but we're open to answering any questions you might have regarding what we presented today and the report you may have had access to, or any other questions you may have. Thank you.
Does that complete admin's presentation? Okay, so then I guess we'll hear from speakers. So we'll ask admin, oh, everybody's remote. All right, then for our speakers, I'll just remind everyone that each person has 5 minutes to make their presentation. There should be a timer that's displayed on the Meet in one of the windows. We ask you to pay attention to that. Once everybody's had a chance to make their presentation, then councillors will ask questions of you. So we encourage you to hang around until the end of the conversation with speakers. If you have any trouble technically, then please reach out to the city clerk in the email that you originally saw that invited you to this meeting. And please refrain from using any of the Meet functions, the hands up and that kind of stuff, because that tends to be a distraction and takes away from the person that's speaking at that moment. With that said, then, we will move to our speakers. So first on my list is Lloyd Cardinal to answer questions only. Second is Tiffany Shaw, followed by Gary Bosgod. Tiffany Shaw? Is Tiffany with us?
I haven't seen Tiffany join yet. I'll have my team reach out to her just in case.
Okay, thank you. We'll then go to Gary Bosgood. Is Gary with us?
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you. My name is Gary Bosgood. I'm a professional engineer and project manager. I work as the president and CEO of Bosgood Project Consultants, a Edmonton-based company practicing in Western Canada. We specialize in managing Indigenous projects. We're involved in close to $2 billion worth of projects in, again, mostly in Western Canada. I'm also the former senior vice president and location manager for Worley Parsons, a company I'm sure many of you are familiar with. At the time I ran it, it was the largest office of theirs in the world. So I have some project experience I'd like to bring to bear on today's discussion. We were, doing many energy and infrastructure projects. I also sit on the board of the University of Regina, the Indigenous Opportunities Corporation, which is a provincial crown corporation, Meg Energy, and Capital Power. I also am involved in the Northwest Workforce Advisory Council, and their Indigenous Construction Career Center Advisory Council. I've also chaired the United Way campaign for the Capital Region and involved in many community activities. I'm also a member of the Pepikassis Cree Nation in Saskatchewan, a recipient of the National Aboriginal Achievement Award as well. I support the city's continued involvement in this project, both in terms of resources, people resources, and funding. The business plan that was done is a needs-based business plan. I think a lot of people have a notion that a business plan is whether or not you should do a business. This business plan is about how to do it. And from that standpoint, there is a way forward to do this project, and the business plan provides some level of detail to that. And if Tiffany was with us, Tiffany would be able to address some of the things that were done. So it's a needs-based business plan based on the consultations through that process and the e-scan that was done a few years ago. This project will have struggles. We've worked on over 150 First Nations projects, 180 First Nations projects. They all have some struggles of various kinds. And it really, in this case, I think, underscores the need for the support of the city. I think the community is passionate. They absolutely have a need, which is a group of needs, which is really expressed universally across the Indigenous community in the city. As a resident Indigenous person, I can share that these are facilities that are desperately needed and will bring the community together and increase its health. Depends which source you look at. There's probably close to 75,000 Indigenous people in the Capital Region. They do not have the resources to do this on their own. They don't have a facility where they can express culturally, in a culturally enriched way, their cultural activities and beliefs, so that we need a facility. And again, the business plan is about how that can be done. So, what I would love to see the city do is to help by leveraging provincial and federal support for the project. The capital cost is something that should be shared, and I think it's a perfect alignment of governments these days to allow that to happen. To increase the capacity funding for the proponents of the project. Again, I think some of the challenges that have been experienced over the last few years reflect the need for more capacity in those organizations so that they can get training, get the resources they need to move forward. I would encourage that, what I call a top-down approach on the project, where at some point we can do studies and sub-studies and follow-up studies. It's time for the political will to step up and decide with other levels of government to move this project forward. It has languished in analysis, and it really does need to have a level of support at a political level to set some boundaries on budgets, to set some boundaries on operating, to set some parameters for the continued support of the city, which has been a wonderful supporter so far, and we've certainly counted on it, but to bring in those other levels of government. In working for over 150 First Nations in Canada and some Métis organizations, all of these communities have the needs for space and services.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, that's 5 minutes. Thank you. There may be some questions for you in a moment.
Mr. Chair, it would be helpful if I'm sorry I missed the timer. I thought it was on the wrong place, but thank you. I'm good.
Thank you. Next we have Beverly Allard, who's here to answer questions only, and Lewis Cardinal, who would be next to speak. Is Lewis with us?
Our offices have reached out to Lewis as well and have not received a response back.
Okay. Next then is Carola Cunningham. Is Carola with us?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Please go ahead.
Tanse Toya Nitsika San Ochi Ogishagoskoyos Ota Amiskwachi Waskigan.
Sorry, you've gone on mute, Corolla. There you go.
There we go. I'm sorry. This project has been on the books with our community for well over 40 years. We have been reaching out in several different venues to the city to support an Indigenous community center. And when I look at the city's growth and expansion with other cultural groups, so the New African Center, the Somali Center, the Muslim Center, the Jewish Center, like every culture has their own place in the city to gather and to do whatever they see fit in their own way. Indigenous people do not have a place that we can come together to host a wake, to light a fire for our spirits that are to travel beyond this dimension. We have no place in the city where we can have Indigenous weddings. We have no place that we can take our children to come together in a very collective form to learn how to make regalia, do their dances, sit with elders. The Friendship Center has been doing the best they can with the resources they have, but it's not enough. And I would really ask you to remember that our people are in the process of reclamation of the way we do things, the way we are, and the way we celebrate. We're in a period of reconciliation where we want settler allies to be working with us, and it's okay for us as Indigenous people to be who we are and to voice our opinions without being penalized for it. And our culture, our language, our land is really in a resurgence place. And I think, you know, I said, well, one of the concerns about the city must be, why are we taking so long? And so I quickly want to address that in that we are in the process of decolonizing. And in order to decolonize, it's much like a first language speaker in that they hear it in English, they take it back, interpret it in their own natural language, then they reinterpret it back into English. And that's what we do with every piece of information. We take it, we decolonize it, we restructure it, then we take it back and try and make it so that the Western world can interpret it. And so that takes a lot longer process than normally anyone would take in developing a project. And so I think that's why you may find that we're a little bit slow on our goals that we've set. I know that I've been away from this table for over a year because I was transitioning my organization to someone else, but I'm committed as a community member, a Métis Indigenous community member, to really see this come full circle. When I think about the efforts my father made 40 years ago in trying to have a one-stop center for our people, I would really like to see this come to fruition in my grandchildren's time. Exe, masicho.
Thank you. Next, we have Karen Bruno.
I was meant to be one of the speakers with the panel. Sorry, I must have signed up for the wrong one.
Okay.
My apologies.
Okay. We'll circle back then to Tiffany Shaw.
Our offices have reached out but have not been able to reach her.
Okay. And Lewis Cardinal? Same? Okay. All right. Well, then we'll go to questions of our speakers. Councillor Tang?
Great, thank you. Thank you to everyone who've register and taking your time out for this conversation and sharing your feedback. I guess I'll start with Gary. If you want to take a minute just to finish your last thought there, I think you had an unfinished thought, so go ahead. And I do have some more specific questions for you.
Well, thank you. That's very generous. I just want to say that the other thing this project will do, of course, is not only build capacity, it'll create jobs. You know, a lot of the projects we've done, you can do projects like this with 80% of the workforce coming from the Indigenous community. These projects are different because of the history of Indigenous people, the need for reconciliation, including economic reconciliation. So please continue collaborating and funding the project. Thank you.
Great. And have you been involved with this project at all? I'm not sure if you said it at the beginning. I may have missed it.
No, I did not. And I have been involved in the project. We did I volunteered for a lot of it, and then we were asked if we could, with Reimagine Architect, prepare the business case and the feasibility study that was done prior to that.
Oh, I see. So you helped to prepare the business case for 2021.
That's correct.
Gotcha. And I guess since you prepared that business case, do you feel much has changed between now and the time when you prepared it?
Councillor, in my world, and we do these things, of course, all the time, the business plans are not something that are published and then become gospel. They are evolving documents. There's many variables. So this business plan, many things have changed over the last year and will continue to change. And we have designed a business plan that allows for those changes to modify the model. I think we've probably issued 3 official versions since that was submitted last fall, and we'll continue to,
evolve.
Bad news. A lot of it's around interest rates and supply chain problems, but there's variables that will continue to change. So the model's set up to allow for those changes and continue to test just what it takes to make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And then to Corolla, I think it's too bad Louis isn't here too, because I had a question around Kichiaski, which I think is opening right around now. Yes, it's open, and fulfills a lot of those intentions and purposes you highlighted in terms of weddings and funeral and ceremonies. And I'm wondering how you see the ICWC as a potentially complement to that. If you can speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. I see it as being absolutely related in everything that we do. We had talked about how we would transport people from the community center out to Kichiaski and make sure that they're able to get onto the land and to be able to go to sweat lodge ceremonies, to be able to walk in the forest and look at flora and fauna. The center is more of an indoor facility, and it would host, entrepreneurs that are Indigenous that would help support the rental of the property and keep the lights on. Like, this is a very close connection to Kichiaski, but it's things that can't be done out there that we need space for in the city.
Thank you so much. Just want to turn it back to Gary again. In your project management experience, this project is going through, city has its model for a capital project, and I'm just wondering, in your opinion, you've had mentioned that Indigenous projects are different for all the reasons you have cited, but the city also has to follow the process it sets for capital project. How do you reconcile those things?
I think it would have been useful to start with those processes. They arrived at the end of the business plan. So now we have a lot of unfinished tasks that were on a long list of feedback from the city. Great questions. Some of them are actually less about finishing the feasibility study and business plan as they are about starting the project, which is encouraging. But it would have been useful to have those up front. They're not so unusual, Councillor. They're involved. They have these things on other projects. It just would have been useful to have them earlier.
Great, thank you so much. I'm running out of time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Hi, thank you. I guess, Mr. Boesgood, you'd mentioned in your presentation that there's about 75,000 Indigenous people within the capital region. Has there been, I guess, has the steering committee sought any contributions from the surrounding municipalities?
That's a good question. I know that of the over 1,000 people, Indigenous people that were consulted in the eScan, I can't tell you where they all live, but that was a bit of a traveling roadshow. Lori might be able to answer that. She was involved in a detailed way, as were others here. Whether or not that traveled beyond the boundaries, I'm not clear.
Okay. And she's part of the admin presentation, correct?
But Lori was also consulting at that time on the eScan.
Okay, well, I guess I'll have to wait until we can ask questions of admin before I can pose that to Lori then, okay?
Oh, I see. Okay.
Just the process we have to follow.
Okay.
And then what we have provided as the business case, there was some engagement done with the community, or is there more to be done?
Typical of an Indigenous project, absolutely. And that has been the foundational piece of this group of Indigenous leaders, community leaders that I respect and follow. Yes, they will continue to insist on consultation with the community right through this project.
Okay. And just looking at the presentation that admin had provided, the cost for the feasibility study and consultants, where would you come into play there?
We're in terms of my fee?
Well, and I don't want to ask specifically, but you're part of the feasibility study, or are you the consultant for project development, or a bit of both?
I was the consultant. The lead, most of our work was done by Reimagine Architect on the feasibility study and on the business plan.
Okay.
So we would have run the numbers. That's from my primary role, is to organize the team, deal with execution of the project, because that's what I do professionally, and the feasibility from a financial standpoint.
Okay. And then, okay, I think that's all for you. And then Ms. Cunningham, you spoke of the Friendship Center that doesn't have the resources. Would there be any collaboration or connection with them for the ICWS or WC?
Yes, they have been an avid participation in the progress over the last 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
So absolutely, we collaborate with all Indigenous organizations that want to come to the table.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Yes, thank you so much, and thanks to our speakers for joining us today. I think it's an incredibly exciting prospect for our community, and really value all the work that you're doing on this. Just wanted to think through some of the technical specifics, I guess. So maybe, I don't know if Ms. Allard or Mr. Cardinal want to speak to, I'm just wondering about this question about having sort of a separate legal entity set up. Just wondering the importance of that, or why that's necessary, and thinking if there have been other considerations of other sort of existing entities that could maybe support this work as well.
Okay, so hi, I'm Beverly, and good question, because this is an area that we've been discussing and evaluating for some time now. And because this project, the primary objective is to have it Indigenous led, and because we feel it's critically important to include our community in that process, we're looking at setting up a legal entity in order to oversee the process in that way. And much like you would in any other organization, you pull together a board, you define your structure, that sort of thing. But we really want to ensure that this is fully incorporating an Indigenous lens and a way of governance that reflects how we govern ourselves. And so trying to mirror that in a existing sort of corporate structure, there's some variations that we really need to flesh out.
Thank you. And I think what you're saying also kind of speaks to potentially some of the limitations of trying to have, a fiscal agent or another organization. Okay. Well, and then so maybe leading from that as well, just wondering what the vision is in terms of from a city perspective, we're often looking to build and strengthen those relationships with our MOU partners. So just wondering again what the vision is in terms of working with nations in the area as well, in addition to urban Indigenous organizations and individuals.
Well, certainly that is part of the consideration and the work that we've undertaken to be fully inclusive because, particularly in our Treaty 6 territory, we are a diverse collection of nations. And in our environmental scan, we did go out to Enoch. We made sure that folks out there had contribution and a say in what this center would eventually look like. And that, that is something certainly that will expand to all the nations around us.
Could I speak to that? Can I speak to that? Is that, yeah?
Yes,
Yeah,
please, please go ahead.
Yeah, this is Lloyd Cardinal. I'm kind of working at the same time right now, but I just wanted to say that with a center, like it's about Treaty 6, Treaty 7, Treaty 8. It's about the Métis Nation. It's also about the Inuit community, right? And also acknowledging that there are 48 First Nations in Alberta. And it's also like a place where many Indigenous groups will gather, and it'll reflect the diversity that exists in these territories, right? It's also something that we had discussed that we're basically like how would I put this? Just give me 1 second. We are bringing together all of these groups so that they can work together, but also at the same time, it wouldn't be a place for just Indigenous people. It would be a place that all people of our city gather. And I'll stop there. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
And just to add to that, they would actually become stakeholders in the building. They probably rent space for their offices.
Great, yeah, and I think those are the types of opportunities I seeing great potential there just for that long term, the operating as well. So that's great to hear. I appreciate that that's part of the vision. Thank you so much. I'll leave it there, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for our speakers?
Councillor Carmel.
I'm not sure who that was.
Oh, sorry, that was Councillor Paquette.
Sure, go ahead. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question in envisioning it going forward. I'm going to draw from a New Zealand example. They had sort of what you might call a friendship center in one of the towns. And about 30 years ago, they decided they need to rebuild it. And when they rebuilt it, they really incorporated their Maori ancestry and teachings, which at the time was kind of revolutionary because a lot of the older generation were desperate to fit in and not be seen as Maori because of fear. But they did this, and it served as sort of a touchstone for an explosion of culture and cross-cultural connections. And so I'm wondering if that's sort of the vision you're going with, or how do you anticipate seeing this moving? And that's my only question. Thank you.
Absolutely. That we have looked at the Maori example and have said that is what we need. And our people are in that same place. There's fear, but yet there's so much excitement to be able to celebrate our beautiful culture, our beautiful teachings, and our ceremonies. And it will bring reconciliation between the peoples.
Anything further then? Any further questions for our...
Well, that was actually my only question, but I was just wondering if anyone else on the panel wanted to weigh in on that question. If not, that's okay. I'm done. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if it's possible. Tiffany Shaw has arrived a little late for the meeting. If there's still a chance to hear from her.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you for your time. So my name is Tiffany Shaw. I'm a architecture, I work with Reimagine Architects, and I'm just at home with my children, so you're gonna hear them cry in the background a few times. I was a part of the project with Reimagine Architects, and what we were looking at was, Jasper, can you help Aurora with the Kleenex, please? Thank you. What I was doing was witnessing the e-scan take place along with Gary Bosgood with great interest, and we're very happy to be a part of the team working on the business case, and also now continue working with them. And I think that what has been, Jasper, can you please help Aurora? Thank you so much. Can you help Aurora, please? I'm sorry, it's a bit crazy here. You can get her. What we have really witnessed, though, is this capacity for understanding what the diversity is in this city and the great passion there is for a project like this to take place. And I thought that Councillor Paquette's question was really quite nuanced in its idea about what this can bring to a sensibility of the city and the powerfulness of what this can be for not just myself as a Métis woman with 2 young children as a single mother, but also what the city can do for aging parents that don't have a lot of funds, that have grandchildren that also need access to the city, what this can do for younger children without parents who need access to cultural divides. Yes, I can help you rub your nose. Here, hold on. And then what we can do with people who have less opportunity, less funding opportunities for services that don't meet their needs, such as my brother who is houseless and often between incarceration, and how it can serve his needs at the same time as my children, as myself, or as my aging grandparents or parents. And I think that these services help give more certainty to, we still have boogers, of course. What this does is it brings more certainty to how we can operate within this city to know that we have the support of these agencies and also our own identity together as a people unified, rather than separating us into different services where I have to continue to go to Métis Nation of Alberta for backpacks for school, for dental health care for my niece who I look after, because I have two nieces that I have to look after that I have no support for, that have a gap and divide for how their services need to meet. So there is really very little to meet all of these needs for my particular situation in the city, because I have enough income to support myself, but not enough cultural safety to help understand how to navigate these rule sets. And as a person in the architectural profession, I have a lot of security to help and find these resources, but there really is large gaps for myself. But just think about the people who don't have the safety of healthcare, who don't have a car, who don't have a certainty of a house, and how that impacts them. So I would say that this is a very exciting endeavor, not just for myself, but for people who have less opportunity, who are struggling on the daily, just like myself, but have much more needs. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the services that the ICWC can provide, not only to bridging the gap of these great needs that are existing for Indigenous people, but also how they can meet the needs of the city to learn how to work within reconciliation with Indigenous people to help with our own pride. Thank you. Sorry, it was very messy.
Thank you. Any further questions then of any of our speakers? Okay, well, thank you then all of you very much for joining us today and for offering your thoughts on these matters. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. And we'll now move to questions of administration and the delegation. And just a reminder that Ms. Bruno is online and is part of the delegation as well. Councillor Tang.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to start with the ICWC folks from the delegation. So thank you so much for your presentation, and also the report you had submitted. I guess I wanted to follow up on a few threads in the overall, in this overall presentation. I was wondering if you can also provide a little bit more context to kind of the initial interest for the steering group when it comes to a location like the River Valley. Why is it so important? And now there are a few other, seems like there's another option on the table here. And it seems like it's temporary or interim. I was wondering if you can speak to that a little bit. Is that the intent? Yeah, and is the group looking to land on a particular direction? Why or why not? If you can just share a bit more on that.
Thanks, Councillor Tang, for your question. I think the best way I could answer your question is to say that part of the interest in the River Valley location comes from information that came from the eScan, and it came quite clear that there was an interest in the location to be somewhere in a park-like setting that is near water. So that sort of is why that direction has been pursued. But in addition to that, what we didn't anticipate was that there might be other opportunities that would come forward, and that we had to take each one in serious consideration if we wanted to, in the very immediately find a way to house and provide this space to the community. So our interests are in meeting the needs of the community, but also getting it done sooner than later. I'm not sure if that answers your questions fully.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think context, that context is helpful. But at this point, are you looking at one or the other, or is it, it's still, nothing is set in stone yet, that you're still exploring all those options?
Yeah, at this point in time, I don't think anything is set in stone. We're exploring our options and want to make sure that we move forward with what's going to work the best for moving this forward as quickly as we can, and again, meeting the needs of the community. So it's still in process.
Mm-hmm. And then just so I'm clear, though, there is a dollar figure mentioned in the report of 18 million, but that's also not necessarily in stone, or nothing is determined. So you have put forward the ask of 308,000 for operating, and that's very different from. I just want to get clarity on that.
Sure. So I guess I'll answer the last question first. In terms of the $300,000 that we're asking for, that's to continue on this journey of selecting the best site that works the best for all of the needs and getting to it as soon as possible. I'm trying to remember the second question.
Just around sort of kind of the other value of 18 million.
Oh, that's a very preliminary. It was actually shared verbally with us, and so that's a preliminary number. We don't actually have a number yet.
Right. So then you're nowhere near towards actually making any kind of ask at that scale.
Yes. Okay. We hope that we'll be able to do that by the next budget cycle.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then just in terms of your 300 or so thousand, that resource, do you see potentially leveraging some of the resources and maybe personnel support within the city to fill that need, or do you see that as dependent on external support?
We're certainly open to any sort of alignments that make sense. I think at this point, we're looking for people who can help us think specifically about doing a commercial building with a social purpose, which I think is a very specific type of development. I think the other thing is that we're also looking for people who can do that translation that Carola spoke about around translating sort of Western processes into Indigenous understandings and back, so that we can move this forward.
Okay, thank you. I'm out of time, but I'll come back for a second.
Councillor Stevenson?
Thank you. Actually, that comment about a commercial building with a social purpose, that got me thinking about just any of the conversations that have been happening with the Edmonton Community Development Company, and if there's a relationship there through End Poverty Edmonton or just through the circle.
I believe in the past we had reached out and had a brief conversation with the Edmonton Community Development Corporation. My understanding is their land is very specifically located in the Alberta, I want to say the Alberta Avenue area, and we're not entirely certain that that's the area we're looking at. But we've certainly had a conversation and are open to continuing to talk to them.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I think you're right that they might not have the right land assets, but some of the skills in that lens that I think you mentioned, there could be some great opportunity there. I think for me, you know, yeah, I've got a few questions, I guess, but I think one of the questions I have is just sort of long-term viability of the center and how we build that in the planning. Just wondering if there's been any consideration. Oh, so I mean, I guess I'm asking two thoughts. Just sort of maybe I'll start there. So what sort of is that vision for the ongoing operating sustainability? Would that be an ongoing relationship with the city in terms of supporting operations, or what would be the thinking there?
I think ideally we aspire to be self-sufficient and self-reliant in the goal of reaching self-determination for Indigenous people. But I think in the meantime, there is some need for government support for this as we sort of get our legs and create more maybe social enterprises that can help support this kind of work and this kind of a building.
Yeah, no, I think I completely understand that, and that makes sense to me. And I'm just wondering if there are, recognizing that a physical building, looking at the next 4-year budget cycle in 2027 in terms of some of that capital construction, just wondering if there's been thought about temporary locations to test out an operating model. And I know that that's a bit of a catch-22 in terms of if it's not a purpose-built building, you don't necessarily get the true sense of what it is. But just wondering if there's any existing city spaces, Orange Hub, for example, just other existing facilities that the work that you want to do can start to happen, and then that can further help inform iterations of the final center down the road.
Thanks, Councillor Stevenson. That's a really good point. I don't know that we've gotten to that kind of conversation yet. We've been pretty operating at a high level of thinking about things like purpose, vision, mission, and what does the governance look like. I think some of the more operational in practice, maybe we haven't explored that as much as we could, and certainly it's something we're open to doing.
Great, yeah, and I, as you say, appreciate that this project is an evolution. But I agree. Sometimes we can. What did Mr. Bosgood say earlier? Sort of get paralyzed. Languish in analysis, which I think can happen sometimes. If there's that opportunity, just get out, start trying that programming, start trying that modeling. I think if there again are city facilities that could help support that, I think that would be something worth exploring for sure. Again, I did just want to follow. Oh, go ahead.
Can I just say sort of one thing? And it's certainly not a criticism, but sometimes it's difficult to know exactly what opportunities exist within the city at any given time. So connecting with those potentials, we don't always know what they are.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and I'll come around for another round of questions, more to some of our core city staff on that as well. Again, just wanted to get your thoughts on the role of First Nations, some of the city's MOU partners in the governance of this moving forward.
That's a good question. We're certainly open to working with anyone who's interested in it and in locating in that building or providing support to the development. As you may know, the landscape within an urban center can be very complicated and diverse, and so we're trying to manage that and both meet the sort of representative government needs as well as the community needs who may not be represented by those political bodies. So it is a tricky space and a tricky balance to bring all of those together, but we're certainly committed to doing that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the answers. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Can we just get everyone to mute unless you're actually speaking? Thank you. Councillor Paquette, you're next.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Councillor Carmel. So in listening to this, it sounds, I will say this, I'm wondering what the impression is here, because it sounds like it's like, okay, we like the idea, we can see the utilization for it. In the meantime, why don't we put you off over into the side place while you develop? Probably okay, but it just sounds very, very familiar to me. And unintentional, an unintentional sidelining. And so I guess the question is, if you had what you really wanted that would actually make an impact and help accelerate this forward, because I think that that's something that we might need to do, what would that look like? And anyone can hop in on this.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. I'll share my 2 cents, and then if anyone else has anything they want to add. I've been working on this for some time now and thinking about what's needed. And I know it maybe seems counterintuitive that a building is necessary, but a gathering space where people can come to, I'm not sure where you grew up, but I grew up in places that had a friendship center, and you always knew you could go there. You could go to the friendship center and there's people around. And so recreating that atmosphere and maybe just slightly different. Of course, we're not trying to be the friendship center, but we're trying to create space where people can come, connect, meet each other, talk, do programs. And so the space is kind of important, and the cultural safety around the space is also really important. So I'll leave it there, and if anyone else wants to add.
I'd just like to add, Lori, to that. Tiffany had mentioned this earlier, but you know, someone who, as an Indigenous person who doesn't necessarily need the programs that are being offered, I think that that's also very important as well. Not only just the programs, but being very cognizant that the space is needed, and it's just not about like low-income programs or, but it's that culturally safe space.
I can actually speak to this directly because I'm part of Otitsi One Contemporary Art Collective, where we opened up our own art center very recently in 2020. We had tried to carve a space out for Indigenous contemporary art for Northern Alberta, and we were very hesitant to do this from the very beginning because we didn't think that we were capable or that we knew how it would work. But since we moved along, we understood that space was actually the biggest gift that we could give our community to understand how we can exercise and understand how we have autonomy within our own spaces. We decided that we wanted to advocate for rent over how to advocate how to have culturally safe spaces, how we can smudge in a space where we won't be questioned if it smells like marijuana, for example, or how we can make sure that people who are two-spirit feel safe in a space that we want to have our own language dedicated to a way that they see language. From the community standpoint, we've gotten a lot of really warm reception because we now understand that space is the biggest place to take up so that we can have our own devices to see what is possible. And I think that's what I see often in these conversations around Indigenous space, not just for ICWC, but for any other Indigenous dedicated space, because people don't know what it looks like. They hear the things, but they don't know what it looks like in the end. And I think that's the best part about it. We're looking for the space of possibility. And unless we're given that space, you can't really exercise it. And partnering with institutions or partnering with agencies is a good way to do it. But because you're always bounded by their rule sets, you can never really fully exercise or get to the way that you really want to derive culture, community, and co-creation.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I would say that maybe some of the programs offered aren't for people who are doing okay, but there will be programs offered that are essential for everyone. I would, and am I wrong in that? In that cultural learning and that language learning and all of those things are kind of essential for the well-being of an entire community, not just the Indigenous community, but the broader community.
Absolutely, there'll
Councilor
be
Paquette,
services.
sorry, I just have to jump in here as acting chair. Councilor Paquette, I believe we are now on questions of the delegation, not the public speakers. Are there any other questions you had for the delegation?
Oh, you know, I didn't know who was on the delegation. I was just taking responses from whoever would, wanted to answer. And, you know, you raise an interesting point that we're following Robert's rules in a meeting about Indigenous ways of knowing. So
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Good example right there.
And then the timer just ran out too. So
I think there was a discussion that maybe when we're talking about Indigenous issues, maybe there could be a bit of fluidity, but I do appreciate you keeping us on track, Councillor.
Yeah, no, my apologies. Councillor Tang, do you have any questions for the delegation?
Yes.
Please.
Okay. Yeah, appreciate that exchange there. I wanted to actually come back to the Friendship Center. You know, it came up earlier in Corolla's speaking points, and I also was mentioned in the report. And currently, or I guess several years ago, the conversation with them paused, but I'm hearing that you are, you know, or whoever, whether it's Friendship Center or others, that you are interested in picking up those kinds of partnership conversations again. Is that what I'm hearing? Or Lori, Courtney, or Karen?
Maybe I'll speak to that. Yeah, those conversations are still continuing. We've been keeping everybody sort of on top of what we're doing, where we're at, and seeing what they're doing and where they're at. So yeah, those conversations are still continuing, and there's still a lot of interest. We have Treaty 8 that was very interested. We talked to the former chief of Enoch, and I've followed up with the current chief of Enoch. They're still very interested. And Canadian Native Friendship Center continues to be interested in what we're doing. And once we decide what we're doing, we will evaluate and see how they want to be engaged and involved. But they do want to be engaged and involved. So they're trying to determine exactly what they're doing as an agency too. So everybody's sort of reevaluating exactly what they're doing and what this new world looks like. Everybody's sort of in a reconciliation mode and really starting to expand and reassess stuff. And that's sort of the vibe that's where Indigenous people are at right now, certainly.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I have some questions for administration. So currently there is 2.5 million left in the capital profile. I didn't see the profile in the capital budget that was just published, so I just want to confirm that it's somewhere.
If I can get Pascal Ladouceur to respond.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Yeah, so the capital budget is reflective of new capital asks. And so this one is previously funded and from the previous capital budget. And so my understanding is that it's active.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see. I think I saw some that are previously funded, but in the current cycle. Okay. And because the ask is about converting those capital dollars into operating, is that challenging, or is that within the city manager's delegated authority?
Do we have finance on?
She's coming.
So
it's maybe a question for Law, but in general, the city manager can move funding from operating to capital to capital, operating to operating, or between the two budgets, provided it's not what I would label new money. So it has to come from an existing project to a different project.
Right, whereas this is existing project to existing project, but from a different, like, capital to operating.
Yeah, and that's also contemplated in the delegation of authority.
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful. But I guess given that we do have a fairly rigorous budget process coming up, the ask today, does it need to be resolved like in this moment, or can it come forward during budget process?
I think you can make this decision at any point in time because you're not looking for new funding. So at the point in time you're comfortable, then you can motion it at that time.
Okay. I have a few more questions I'll sneak in here. There is also the TRC report coming. Well, you know what? I'll save myself for another round. Thank you.
Councillor Stevenson?
Thank you. And yeah, also sort of turning to our staff. So, really appreciate the point around not wanting to detract from the overall vision of having a purpose-built facility. And I have to confess, reading through the report, there seemed to be sort of a lot of concerns being raised. So, not feeling comfortable with the River Valley location, just sort of I was just sensing a bit of resistance sort of in reading through the report. And that again might have just been the way I was reading it. But I'm wondering, in addition to a potential budget motion to reallocate some funding, do you need clear direction from council to say, yes, we want this to happen, yes, we want this built? Not that we wouldn't go through proper due process, but that we were starting from a yes and space rather than a, well, we'll see if it's feasible.
So in response to your question, Councillor, and thank you for that, I think clarity on whether we want to proceed with this likely is grounded in what are we asking for clarity on. And so as noted from the speakers today, there's still a lot of conversation to be had in terms of what are we moving towards. And so it's difficult from this seat to provide a request yes or no, because I'm not sure exactly what we would be asking you to say yes to move forward on, or no to not proceed on.
Okay, well that's helpful. I think as long as you feel empowered to continue those conversations and provide the support that they may be requested, I think that's great, and we can continue to work together on that. Just wondering what the next check-in points would be for us as well. Would we be looking for sort of a report a year from now, or what sort of makes sense in terms of making sure that we're checking in so that if you do need that feedback, we can be providing it?
So I think the most sensible point for check-in would be on completion of the business case. So clarity again on how the community would like to proceed with this would be a reasonable check-in point as to whether we'd like to proceed or not.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think those. Oh, and just anything else? And I could have asked this. This could go to the other members of the panel as well. But just how can the city best support your work? So there's the funding request. Any other involvement that you require from council? I don't know who I can direct that to. Anyone that has a thought on that is welcome to share, and no worries if not.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to speak. So
no, I'm sorry. Actually, I don't think you are, but thank you. Thanks.
No worries. I think Karen and others have this. So.
Hi, Councillor Stevenson. It's Lori. The best I could say to that is certainly open to having a conversation, but we don't always know what's available. So the difficulty is, how do you ask for something you don't even know if it exists? So.
Right. Okay, well, thanks. I think that's a good reminder, and maybe just, you know, the opportunity for us to be involved in some of the dialogue as well, just to, again, make those connections and see, yeah. So I think, is it fair that you will reach out to us if there's conversation opportunities or things that you'd like to connect to us about?
Yes, I think we could definitely do a better job at that going forward.
No, and that's not a criticism at all. I mean, you were doing a great job of shepherding this project forward, but I just want to make sure that you know that we're here as resources as well.
Yes, and I didn't take it as a criticism, just that we could do more communicating for sure.
Great. Okay, thank you so much, and thanks again for all of your work.
Thank you. Councillor Paquette.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Carmel. So as the business plan develops and the visioning gets clearer, I'm just wondering if there's room here, or if there's been contemplation to thinking, envisioning really big. And by big, I mean as impactful as possible. Because there is a tendency sometimes, especially in Indigenous circles, where if we even manage to get the attention of the government, the thinking automatically becomes as small as possible in order to be palatable. And I'm just wondering if you've given thought to this idea that in an era of reconciliation, community safety and well-being, all of the efforts that we have, the idea that people want to fund certain things in order to decrease pressure on police and things like that. If we've really taken the time to think really, really big about what is possible and deciding to move forward from a position of strength and confidence, knowing that these are going to be the actual solutions rather than something that is sort of a, scraps from the table, so to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. In terms of dreaming big, I think one of the things that has come up again and again was the idea that this may be one center, but there are several facilities or buildings that are needed for a variety of reasons. And so while we're working towards making this one happen, I think in the back of our minds, we're already thinking of the next couple of projects. There's been discussion about there's need all over the city, not just centrally located. There's need in the west. There's need in the northeast. There's need in the for access in the far south. So we're certainly aware that this one space may not answer all those questions, and there's likely need for more, and there's more for different spaces. I know there's talk about potentially a place, a homeless shelters that's not faith-based. I don't even know if homeless shelter is the right word, but for a shelter that's more Indigenous, grounded in Indigenous ideas about working with unhoused. So I think I think the power in the building is in having the space to come together and figure out how to do those other things. That's the sort of synergy part of having a place where we can convene and talk and meet and plan and pool resources. I think that, to me, that seems the power and energy in getting this one place to start.
Oh, great. Good answer. And so do you think there's a contemplation that as you develop further that we may see a higher level sort of roadmap of what needs are and what is going to be required moving forward in the vein of what you've just spoken about, and that will be developed as well?
I think that's the hope, but I think there's maybe we need to get together to be able to have those conversations, to come to those conclusions. And there is maybe some need to have the space to engage amongst ourselves on how we can do, and by what I mean engage among Indigenous people about what we want our future to look like, and how we want to play a role in creating that.
Okay, so to your mind, do you feel like this next step is literally just the next step, that it's just the first place on the board, and the journey is a little bit further, and there is far more to come because it's necessary and will help transform this city in a positive way. Is that sort of what you're thinking? That was a very leading question, but.
Yes, I think we've all been thinking about how can we best meet the needs, and the needs are many, and only one building is probably not going to meet all the needs that exist within the city.
Yeah, okay, I appreciate it.
But it's a start.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I just said, but it is a start.
Yeah, it's a start. Okay, great, thank you. I used up way
Sorry,
too much time in this meeting, and I'm cognizant of it, so I'll skip out.
Can I jump in really quick?
Were you on the delegation?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the goal is to have something iconic and big and that's meaningful for our people, to really showcase our culture and who we are, that kind of thing. And what that looks like, we're not too sure. I know the eScan said, it really wants to be by water and have access to land and that kind of thing. But the other thing that I think we always think about too is that immediate need right now. So, the genuine concern of our people right now and the immediate need for something now. So whether it's project 1, project 2, project 10, that still needs to be determined by our people. But we still need to, like Lori said, we need to still get together and have that conversation.
Thank you. Councillor Tang.
Yes, great, thank you. I'll just finish up with a few questions here for administration. We do have the TRC report coming on October 31st, and under resurgence action, I didn't see this project as listed as one, which I understand, we're still under development and there's still much work to be done, but do you see this as, I see a lot of, obviously, alignment and.
Thanks, Councillor Tang, for that question. I would say in general, I do see alignment there. And of course, the TRC response is also a living document as well. So it's something that we'll be continuing to work on as we go forward as a city. I would say that certainly there's definitely still more work to do together with the steering committee of ICWC to, again, define the purpose and the scope. But I think in general, I think you're right. I think Indigenous resurgence is certainly a part of it. So thanks.
Yeah, and I understand we do have staff members on the steering group, and I was wondering about the question from Councillor Stevenson earlier around recommendations for those temporary locations to test, before anything is even to that point, to test, how might things operate. Has that ever been contemplated or suggested?
You're talking about potential locations?
Or
Sorry?
like temporary, just to kind of test out a model of operation, because I thought that was an interesting idea she had brought up. And I was just wondering if there's a history of that.
Sure. I would say we haven't had in-depth discussions about a temporary location, but certainly going back to 2020, we did have some kind of initial conversations with the Edmonton Community Development Company, the Exhibition Lands project team, and our real estate branch. But we can certainly revisit those conversations and expand on them for sure in this new context of looking for sort of an interim solution for a facility.
Who was just speaking there? Sorry.
I think I'm actually pretty much done with my questions. I think this is we don't have anything on the table here. We can either receive it for information, or we do have a motion prepared. But I also feel like there's lots of conversations still, very active and very much happening. Previously it was a total $3,500,000 of that was spent on the eScan, the business case, and these are very much deliverable based. And if I look at the budget breakdown for the 308. There is kind of staffing and feasibility studies, and I guess I just wanted a clarification from the ICWC folks. Currently, you have EPE staff members playing a supporting role, but not necessarily dedicated to the project. Is that right? Courtney or Karen or Lori? or Lori, you are the project manager for this.
I'm currently playing that project management role. Sorry, I'm just trying to remember the question, and maybe if this is I don't want to speak for Eric's staff as well.
Yeah, I think we just lost Courtney, but I don't know if Karen, you want to comment just on the staffing support, because ICWC currently is under Poverty as a game changer, and my understanding is that EPE is providing staffing support.
Yes. EPE has been providing staffing support, and also Poverty Edmonton has been providing some funds too. So for us to move forward on some of the things that need to move forward, and we'll continue to provide that support. We feel much more secure now that we have Lori in her position. We actually don't call it co-chair or project manager. We call it stick handler, which is a traditional term. That's usually a stick man, but she's not a stick man, so we call it stick handler. And that's somebody who sort of gets things organized and coordinated in a community, mostly in ceremonial context. So, but yeah, we'll continue to provide that support. And we also do. This is one of the things that we do as directors of indigenization. We also have our other game changers that we're working at and working on. So
this is like this is kind of like one of the many things you're supporting.
Correct.
Okay.
So
I will see what my colleagues have to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ray.
Thank you very much. Ms. Miller, I guess you've been working with Councillor Tang on a possible motion to move funds around. And is it then moving it from capital to operating within the city manager's authority to do that? Or would this motion first have to go to council to be approved?
So perhaps I can look towards.
Just for, there's no motion on the floor, so that's hard for anybody else that's following to understand what it is your question's about. So if we're going to ask questions about a motion, then it ought to be made, and then we can ask questions about it. Sorry, Ed.
Okay, thank you.
Just for transparency of those that are watching along.
Okay. So I'm not sure if Councillor Tang wants to put the motion on the floor or. Okay. In order to move funds from a capital project to a operating budget, can that be done within the city manager's authority if it's under $1 million?
Yeah, so I think that was previously answered by Stacey Padbury, that it is functionally possible to do so. In this event, given the interest in this project, I think it would be, we want to make sure that council also understands what we're doing here and the impact to the overall view for this project.
Okay, so it can be done. This is just sort of a dot the I's, cross the T's kind of thing. Does it have to, if there would be a motion put forward, would it have to be approved by council? Or could it just be done committee and that's it?
Okay, so.
Okay, now I'm talking the motion again.
Right, so I'm going to, maybe I'll take a turn if you don't mind, Councillor.
Thank you.
Right. Dollar motions need to be approved by council, correct? So if we're moving money around, that becomes a council decision and I refer to council. That's my understanding. Yours as well? Need someone to speak into a microphone.
That's correct.
Besides you, Councillor Paquette.
I think Ms. Flaman was nodding. Could she, I guess, verbalize?
Yeah, I'm not the expert on council and committee procedure.
Budget motions need to be approved by council.
I'm pretty sure of that, but I can only ask questions. So with respect to this profile, $3 million was originally set aside effectively to design a building or to develop the scope of a building design. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
So if the intent is to use those dollars for some other thing, repurpose a building, further a business plan, spend more dollars on one phase or another, is it fair to say that while that's within the dollar purview of the city manager, repurposing money is not necessarily something that's ordinarily done within profiles like that? Or am I wrong, Ms. Padbury?
I think the delegation is broad enough that it allows some repurposing of funding provided that there's no new funding. It's designed to allow us to respond to changing needs.
There may be an impact, however, that if dollars are taken out of the approved funding, that at some point down the road, more dollars are going to be required to develop a plan to repurpose a building or develop a plan for a new building.
That's correct. So generally, when we do it administratively, we're moving from, we're making a step to move money where either it's not needed and we've got some certainty, or we're comfortable with the fact, like in a situation where we're moving something from capital to operating, we're comfortable with the fact that the nature of the expense is being characterized as operating versus capital, but the intent of the intended use of the funds is still consistent.
I'm a little worried about the consistency, that no motion is made and therefore there is no motion in the minutes of this meeting, but at a subsequent meeting, there's a request for further dollars to continue what amounts to a preliminary plan that references a decision sort of made here, but not actually made here. Maybe that's more of a clerk question, but I think it's more transparent if we're going to repurpose dollars or instruct admin to repurpose dollars, and we know that that's the intent or that's what's going to happen, that motion ought be made.
So I don't have the capital profile in front of me, but the capital profile does talk about planning. So
okay.
The nature of what's being asked here it's consistent with the information noted in the approved capital profile.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's helpful. Those are all my questions. So back then to you, Councillor Wright. I interrupted your time.
Thank you for the clarity, I think. So city manager has the authority, as long as it's within the plan, to move from capital to operating. So I guess I am just concerned why this is being, why a motion for committee or council to approve would be needed. And that's not a question.
I don't think we have, I think we've cleared up that a motion is not required for dollars to be put to use in the way that's being contemplated in this meeting. A motion's not needed.
Okay, then we'll let the city manager do his job, I guess.
We do, however, need, if there's no, we'll finish questions. Ultimately, though, we would need a motion to receive for information. Otherwise, if there's no other motion to be made. Did you have any further questions?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Wright, or pardon me, Councillor Tang.
Okay, sorry. I think I heard our CFOs, or I think I heard that exchange as to say, well, it's not functionally needed. A motion is not functionally needed because it's within the purview of city manager's delegation. But but in the interest of transparency and continuity, it's better to put it forward today so that when it does come up in budget, we understand that this is a reference back to this meeting. I guess that's a question to chair.
I don't think we need a motion for admin to go ahead and do what we've asked them to do, or what they're thinking of doing. I think a receiver information is enough. I think that's been made clear. So,
okay.
Not sure if that's answering your question, but a motion that is made to that effect. You know, it's at this point it's 6 1/2 dozen of the other, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so my intent is I would like this project to keep moving and keep moving, faster if possible. and get whatever support that it needs to bring it to life. I think we're all in this room, I think are on that page. So I guess I'm just trying to think of like what is the most expeditious way of getting there. If we receive this for information today, I guess I'm looking to administration to see if it's possible to continue some of these conversations that's still very much happening. It sounds like there's partnership stuff happening. There is, various options, and look to you to develop that budgetary, move within the city manager's purview. Because I also understand this project is community-led, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that council decided that to amend the lead from the City of Edmonton to end poverty Edmonton. So being cognizant of who the actual lead is of this work, we want to respect that.
Yeah.
So maybe the question is best posed to the steering committee in terms of next steps.
Yeah, maybe, if Lori, Courtney, or Karen, if you want to comment on some of the next steps based on what you're hearing, because there's a few different ways of, I think, getting there. And I've expressed my intent, because I think, we all want to see this project come to life. There's still a lot of outstanding questions and conversations. What is your take?
So there's a lot of discussion about things that are beyond my knowledge. I don't quite understand how things happen or get done. We basically wanted, so back in August, the mayor had said, really need to get in front of us if you need money, and or if there's an ask. And so we wanted to provide an update and say, this is what we think we need to go forward. We don't necessarily know the exact pathway for that, but we wanted to put it on the table so people knew what we needed to move forward. So that was, I guess, our intent for today, was to make this committee aware that that's what we needed or are proposing.
Yeah, and I think I think it's very clear what the ask is and why it's needed. At this time, I will receive this report for information. I will encourage administration to work, following the lead of ICWC specifically, to identify specific next steps. And if there's an absolutely need for council, direction, come, budget, especially since we do have a couple days of public hearing, welcome that conversation then as well. But at this point, I would like to put that forward.
Okay, so we have a motion for receipt of information on the floor. Questions can continue to administration or to the mover. Councillor Paquette?
Just to speak.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, speaking to the motion then, we'll start with you, Councillor Paquette, see if anybody else clicks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate the conversation and the vulnerability and the forthrightness. This is actually really great. So obviously this need is here. I think it was Louis Cardinal who worked with Douglas Cardinal way back when to develop a series of different projects that they thought could go in Edmonton. I think it was called the Pahonan Project. And one of them was an Indigenous Center of Culture and Wellness. And at that time, it was sort of a Douglas Cardinal preliminary design. And for some reason, that sort of fell to the wayside. And this is sort of the restart of it. And what I'm really confident about is that the steering committee will be bringing in more and more folks over the next few weeks and months to help direct the development of this. We have a successful Indigenous cultural learning area in Fort Edmonton Park. And I am absolutely certain that FEMCO, some of the folks on FEMCO would be happy to lend a few moments of their time to lend some wisdom and experience in this case. And on top of that, we obviously we've got architects involved. We've got people involved in project management. So this can only go well, but it will also take a path a little bit different than what we're used to with your standard city project, because this is something that is not being invented whole cloth, but is going to require a different kind of weft and weave, I believe. And we see examples of really cool things coming out of cities like Winnipeg. And they are light years ahead of us in this arena, despite the fact that our Indigenous population is growing much, much faster. And therefore, our need is much, much greater. And the opportunity to share culture, to enable healing, to reduce social issues, but to increase literacy among Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people alike about culture and language and history and society in general, to be frank, is something that this will really move the dial forward on. And so I'm quite bullish on this. I'm really excited. And to the steering committee, please do not hesitate to avail yourselves of counsel. At least my door is 100% open. Anything you need, let me know. Let's just make this a massive success. And I believe it will be. And I'm actually really excited. And I'm really proud of this council for moving things forward. And I'm proud of the people who came out from the community and of our administration, all their efforts. This is actually one of the great good news stories in this city at a time when we really desperately need them. And so thank you very much for that. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay, I'll go to Councillor Tang to close then.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yeah, like I mentioned before, this is a project I've followed since my time at the city as a staff member, and thinking to myself, for the second largest, and some could argue, depending on how you look at population, but the second largest urban Indigenous population, I was actually quite surprised that we actually don't have more Indigenous-led facilities and capital, and we know that need will only grow. So I don't think it's a question of whether or not, but it's a matter of if and when. I'm sorry, it's not a matter of question of if, but it's a matter of when. And I certainly would like to see the process move along steadily. And I do think, since the last business case was published in 2021, there are some context changes. There are some new options on the table, and I think it's very fair to revisit some of these questions. This is the steering group has largely been a volunteer-based group, and I think, Lori, you don't have to answer this, but I understand your role as a project manager on this. It has been fairly recent. Of course, with more support from EPE staff, we know that when we put resource to this, when we dedicate folks to help a cause, things move a little bit quicker. And I would say in the past year, even just participating on the End Poverty Stewardship Roundtable, I've seen more progress. I've seen steady progress with this particular project. That makes me very hopeful. And I think your ask is loud and clear. And I think it's just a matter of the mechanics of kind of bringing it to life. And I'm also conscious that there are some outstanding questions and conversations that can be resolved, or that also needs to happen. So I would also just very much encourage city staff and the ICWC continue on this partnership approach, this collaborative approach, following the lead of the community, because I think a lot of the questions around where the facility will be and kind of the timeline, I think they're there, and I am. Just to echo Councillor Paquette's comments, I am excited, and I think this will be this project actually reminds me a lot of some of the other community-led projects as well, many of which have gone back to the community because contexts have changed, and I think it's reasonable for ICWC to revisit and to leverage some more resource. You know, I want to thank the speakers for coming forward and the sound advice that they've provided. In particular, you know, I was thinking about Mr. Bosgood's earlier comment around, you know, a project like this needs support. And to me, you know, 300,000 from capital into operation is that support that is necessary, that is coming from the community, and I certainly would like to see that happen. Certainly we'll be following along, and you know, come budget deliberation, I will, you know, check in with this and see how things are going, and if there's other support needed at that time as well. So just want to thank everybody for coming out, and to thank my committee members for administration for all the work and for the conversation.
Thank you. Please vote on receipt of information.
We have 3 votes.
Please display the vote. That is carried. Thanks everyone again for your attendance here today, particularly those that have joined the delegation from other organizations. We really appreciate your input and your insights and your support. That takes us to item 7.2. I think we have time for the administration's introduction before the break.
So we are here to present the 2022 Anti-Racism Grants Program recommendations. In fall 2019, City Council established the City of Edmonton's Anti-Racism Advisory Committee and approved $300,000 in ongoing tax levy funding to support community-based projects focusing on anti-racism activities through the creation of an anti-racism grants program, which the committee would advise on. Administration worked with members of the Anti-Racism Advisory Committee to develop a grant program which launched in June 2021. 2022 marks the second year of the Anti-Racism Grants Program, and we present to you today the review panel's award recommendations for your review and approval. Administration is supportive of these recommendations and would be pleased to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll go to questions of the delegation. We'll start with Councillor Tang, who exempted this item. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I guess I just want some clarity around. Thank you for all the work that the committee did in education and going through all those processes. I know it's not an easy process. I guess I just want some clarity on the various anti-racism grants that we have approved, because there's also the anti-racism under CS, community safety and well-being. Is that a separate process of education?
Yeah, I can answer that question, Councillor Tang. It's Mike Chow. There are 3 funding streams. We have this $300,000 annual grant program that was established, right, and that's ongoing base funding. And then Council approved 2 one-time programs to move forward. And so one of them is $1.5 million for community safety well-being grants and $1.175 million for anti-racism and community safety funds. And we have accepted applications. We're reviewing those. Those will be coming forward in the new year to Council.
Okay. I mean, there's just feels like a little, quite a bit of overlap, and then is the decision-making process different then? I'm assuming different education panels for each of the 3, right?
Yeah, the community safety well-being grants are being reviewed and administered through the administration. The $1.175 million is undertaking the same process with a community review panel.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I feel like I've seen lots of emails and posting, and Thank you for the clarity. I thought it was very interesting that you brought back past grantees who were successful with theirs as education member. I think that's a very interesting way of getting folks involved. I was a bit surprised with the youth stream, just based on the conversation I've had with various youth groups, in the Southeast, and so much interest among young people on anti-racism, and no one applied to this. I'm just wondering, what are some of the ways that you're thinking you might be able to attract more interest? Has this gone through, for example, with the youth committee, who also collaborated on the report with anti-racism committee? So I feel like there's lots of connections, and I'm just a bit surprised by that piece.
Yeah, it's a great question. We're exploring various opportunities. We know that, with the two school boards, with their current strategic plans, they've definitely had a focus on anti-racism and reconciliation. So we're looking to meet with the various school boards because, again, with the various youth groups, I think they need an extra level of support rather than just applying for the grant. They need some mentorship opportunities. They need to be working with a number of different agencies. So we're exploring all of those opportunities around what are the scaffolding of supports that we need to create around that, in addition to the funding. So we hope to bring something forward with some kind of solution more robust in the new year. In our conversations with the school boards in the relaunch of this school year, they've just been trying to stabilize activities and reset clubs and some of those extracurricular opportunities. But we've had some initial discussions with Edmonton Public, and they're very, very interested. So I think that is a natural solution as we move forward into the new year.
And then what happens to the remainder of the fund? Does it get rolled over into that as part of that base funding? Because I don't think last year there was a outstanding balance as well, right?
Yeah, so what we've decided and what we're recommending in this report is that we would roll over, or not roll over, I guess it's that the funds that were unused, that we would request that you would reallocate those to the community safety well-being program that we are currently administrating for projects that align to the anti-racism pillar. That program is currently oversubscribed, and we think that this would be a good use of the funds that align to the intent and the spirit.
Although this is oversubscribed too, the ask is over $1 million for a $300,000 grant program.
That's a great point, and the review panel, in reviewing all of the applications that were unsuccessful, felt very strongly that they were unsuccessful because they needed some further work. And so, there's the oversubscription in regards to groups applying, and their applications need another relook and some improvement, versus an oversubscription where there just simply wasn't enough funds to be allocated. And so we're seeing that in the other grant programs where there's a lot of great applications and a lot of great need, but there's just not enough funds in those funding envelopes.
Thank you.
Thank you. That takes us to 3:30, so I think we'll recess now and reconvene at 3:45. Thank you.